Materials: Vine charcoal, charcoal pencil, kneaded eraser, and a blending stick. We're going to take our vine charcoal and cut it into a small piece. I'm using the vine charcoal on its side and using the blending stick to press it into the paper. I am then practicing using the kneaded eraser, just kind of bunch it up in my hands and get it dirty so that it's not picking up so much charcoal. In this next step here, we are going to establish a 5-step value scale. I'm taking the kneaded eraser and I'm lightly erasing out value number 1 and value number 2, knowing that I'm going to come back to those values and re-establish them or make them just a little bit darker, but for now we'll keep it like this. We go to value number 3 and take a little bit of vine charcoal and add a little bit on top so that value number 3 can get darker. This is a good base color because we can always go a little bit darker towards the right and darker towards the left and really start to make a sensitive jump between the values. So it's always about comparing the relative darkness of one value, comparing it to the value that it's sitting next to. So you can see here that I've already adjusted the value number 1 and number 2, and actually number 3 a couple of times already. And then we go to value number 4, and I start to put a little bit more pressure down on the vine charcoal and also on the blending stick, using it on its side to push some of that charcoal into the paper. And then value number 5 goes significantly darker. You can take your kneaded eraser and just clean up the edges. And now I'm just making slight adjustments to value number 1 and number 2. You want the steps or the light or darkness of a color to be evident without you squinting too much. Now here I'm using an HB charcoal pencil, and I am lightly shading over every step. I'm not changing the value very much at all. What this is doing is it's setting the vine charcoal into the paper. Now we're going to go into discussing light logic. And here I'm drawing a sphere, and then I'm going to draw perhaps where the light source is. I'm going to take the light source and run it along the top and the bottom edge of the sphere so that I get the length of the shadow. You draw an ellipse through the form, and then here I'm defining what it can be called the core shadow or the form shadow. Here will be the highlight, the form shadow, and the cast shadow. You're going to take a little bit of your vine charcoal and we're going to put a bit of value on the sphere. At this point, just depositing a middle tone layer, something that you could still work into the darks and lighten up as well. Using the blending stick on the form. We want to be very careful that we don't outline the edges of the sphere. so that we can use value in order to make it feel volumetric or three-dimensional. I'm darkening the form shadow here and definitely darkening the cast shadow. We also want to be careful not to create a hard line on the cast shadow. I am using that side of the blending stick. I'm rarely on the tip of the blending stick. I am darkening the terminator point, and I'm going to use the blending stick to blend that so that it's not a hard line or a hard break. So I'm going to take that dark and I'm going to pull up and down to create a softer transition. The shadow will go dark towards the center there, and then it'll lighten up because of the reflective light that bounces from the table back up to the object. So there's the area where we have the reflective light, and now I'm using the charcoal pencil just to lightly reestablish the edge of the sphere that I lost there. Now I can darken the shadow and hold on to that reflective light. Clarify the form again with the HB pencil carefully so that I don't outline. Shading up to the edge. Now I'm using the kneaded eraser and I wrap it around my thumb. And now I'm creating a highlight area. I like to use a dirty kneaded eraser. I don't clean it up or stretch it out right at the beginning. I use the dirty kneaded eraser as a blending tool so that it doesn't pick up all of the charcoal at once, and that way I can slowly build up to the light. Now I want this form to come forward from the background, and so I took the charcoal and dropped in a very dark background. And so the sphere is going to feel lighter and it's going to come forward because of that. So here are the basics. We draw the sphere, we have the light source, we have the core shadow, we have the highlight, core shadow, cast shadow, reflective light. And the terminator point. I want to always be really careful not to create a shape with that dark transition area because then it looks like a hole. And then the other thing that you want to watch out not to do is not completely outline the form. So the next exercise that you can practice is just working the light logic on a pear and basically follow the same system. In this case, I toned the paper with fine charcoal. I lightly gestured in the pear and then put in a shadow on the right side of the pear and put in a cast shadow underneath it, darkening the cast shadow after blending the entire thing. Already here you can see 3 steps. On the left side of the pear, the core shadow on the pear being like a middle tone gray, and the shadow shape on the table going a little bit darker, but I could always make it darker even. Now I'm using a dirty kneaded eraser to blend out or lift out bits of light and being careful to not create hard lines on the form, using the eraser as a blending tool as well. You can always use your charcoal pencil in order to start to define some sharp edges on the form. I drew the stem and then I'm just clarifying how the stem fits into the form, but then adding just a little bit of shading around the top, shading over the shadow side of the pear. Remember, this is just really to set the vine charcoal into the paper and to deepen the shadow. It also adds nice energy, nice mark making to the drawing itself. Use your charcoal there to add some darker value to the background. And what that does is that it's really pulling the form forward. And then you're just going to add finishing details to your drawing, just clarifying edges, deepening shadows, and then cleaning up the edges with the kneaded eraser as well. Just giving it a finishing touch.